Engine 1 from Car 1. Car 1's on scene at Subin Command. Give me a C.A.N report.
Hello, everybody. This is Mike Goldstein, Stickers at the C.A.N Report. I am with a very special guest, Rob Policht of Flow and Vent. We've been talking on and off for a while, been trying to coordinate a podcast with each other, and we finally got it going. Rob runs the podcast Flow and Vent. I'm sure a lot of you have listened to it. He has some really good content, and today we're going to be talking about pretty much anything and everything. And Rob represents New Jersey, as you can tell from his hat. So we're happy to have you on. Rob, thank you so much for being on the C.A.N Report.
Mike, appreciate it. It's been, like you said, it's been a long time coming, especially with that other chat we got going on with all social media pages. It's nice to get together and have a quick chat. And like you said, I think we had one scheduled a couple of weeks ago, and it just got crazy. And I guess it's like a late night edition of it.
Yeah.
Trying to get together, get something going.
Almost 9 o'clock here, so it's pretty cool that we can do this. We're on both on an Eastern Standard Time and just see what rabbit holes we'll get down. Since this is not planned, we're just going to have a lot of fun and just talk.
You just got to send it. That's it. Have fun with it.
Full send, Rob. Rob, why don't you give a quick bio/background of who you are, where you come from?
Yeah, absolutely. No, like Mike said, my name is Rob Policht. I'm a super buff here in northeastern New Jersey. I work in a little city called Passaic. I volunteer in Bergen County. I volunteered around the area, though. I've been down to Seabright, Island, all over the New Jersey area. Started out, like I always tell everybody, there's no hiding this. There's no background with it. But I started out as a kid just trying to get college credit. I'm a first-generation American, and my parents really didn't know anything when I was in that college phase. So I said, let me just try to join something, and it worked, and I got stuck in it, and, I'm glad I did. After high school, went on to Colorado for a year, did some stuff with fire safety, stayed involved, came back, kept volunteering, finished school, and ran through the ranks of my one volley house up to chief for a couple of years during the infamous COVID stages. Now I'm back in the volunteers as a training officer again, and at work, I'm just a lieutenant that just likes to ride the tiller and help out and do some training on the side. So, and like you said, we got the podcast, we got the social media pages. Once in a while, I'll write for one of these magazines that people might read here and there. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell at like Mach 50. But, that's really it, man. I really I try to keep it short and sweet and stay interesting, stay relevant,
I like
right?
It. Yeah. So you're a first generation. So your family comes from Poland?
Yeah, both my parents are from Poland. My mom came here when she was a teenager. My dad defected here. He was a cyclist on the national team, and he came over here. First, that was my story, how I ended up in Colorado is, when he came here, they tried to, part of the whole thing was to try to get him to be a cyclist for the American team. Didn't work out so much, but he ended up at Colorado. And that's how all the puzzle pieces connected, even when we did the Drago podcast a couple months ago, where he had a different kind of background, but same kind of, my dad and he left Poland in the same era. So what was crazy was just learning through his book, what my dad kind of went through on a different level. But again, now I'm here just doing the typical fire service stuff. And next week we're going back to Poland. So that's full circle for me to go back and, help out with forcible entry and water cans. And,
oh, wow.
It's crazy. Your parents leave there because they don't want to go back. And now you go back because it's the right thing to go see your grandparents and things like that. So a couple of us will be going out.
That's
sure.
Awesome. So is it a team? Like who's going out with you in Poland?
So for this one, I'll give all credit. If anybody's on the social media world, a kid named Michael, he runs a firetrap.pl on Instagram, and he's really doing a lot with like just bringing fire training, and it's not just fire-based stuff; it's rescue and all this kind of stuff. So he's like got the monopoly, I'm going to call it that, on the Polish fire service right now with training. He's like really running the train here. But he came out last summer, said he was visiting. We were talking just like you and I were on social media back and forth, and came visit. And when he was here, I sent him over the bridge to New York City to visit a friend of ours, Maddie, in the squad. The same thing, took pictures. This kid, Mike was really interested. I got another Mihao, right? My brother's Michael too, so it's just funny. They're all digging, getting ideas on bailout and equipment and this and that. And we kept in contact the whole time. And then about, I said I was going to visit eventually. And then a couple months ago, he's like, hey, we just got an order of, because he got also connected with like Bob Farrell and all the guys that are making tools and whatnot. And he's like, hey, we ordered a bunch of water cans. I'm like, all right, cool, water cans, not a big deal. He's like, no, like we've never had water extinguishers, water cans, as you call them. So,
wow.
You still speak the language. You want to come out here and do something? I was like, visit my grandparents and happen to do fireman stuff on the side. Why not? So,
wow, that's cool. So you got grandparents out there still?
Yes, my mom's side is they're still alive. They're up in the the northwestern side of it in Poznane. My dad's side's from like the mountainous range and southwestern area of Bolesław. His parents passed away, my side of grandparents on that side. So, yeah, we're going to go visit, and then we're going to so there's 3 of us going out from here. Me, Ben, and Dave, again, all guys that have been part of like this training circle that we've had. Ben's with me to a bunch of conferences. Dave's getting involved. He's newer. And I'm sure we're going to talk about him when we get into our sidebar conversations about just younger officers and things. But we're going out there and, little family time, little adventure time with the bros, and then a couple of days of some fireman shit. And, it's going to be crazy to say that you've taught internationally, right? You grew up in a small town, small 2 square mile town doing nothing, being a nobody. And now, you write a couple articles and, you stay true to who you are. Like, again, this was a good conversation we had during this week with a couple other chiefs in the state about, guys that go beyond, they extend beyond their reach when it comes to writing and teaching and things like that. And I just try to keep it real and keep it low key. I think that's why I've had a decent record for my stuff, because I don't talk about shit that I haven't done or shit that I don't believe in. Like, that's the tough part, right? They'll be like, hey, you're smart. You know how to do research papers and things like that and how to give credit there, but there's nothing genuine behind that when you start reading things. Listen, we're firemen. Right, you could read through stuff and be like, man, this guy's full of it. Or you might be like, you know what, this kid totally took a 90-degree turn, and now he's like the most recent one. My buddy out in Colorado, Jacob, just sent me a text. Again, for you social media handlers out there, he's the Sons of Irons kid, and he was like, oh, I see what you're doing now. Like, I wrote about carnival emergencies. Like, for me, like, have I ever rappelled off of a bucket into a zipper machine? No. But I've been a chief that ran twice a year they had a carnival, and it was my job to figure out egress points, all that like fire code stuff that I'm not doing. But hey, how is the apparatus going to fit? So I took a hard 90 on that instead of being so technical and made it more of a planning kind of a scope paper. And I guess some folks like it, and maybe that's why I still get the lunch money once in a blue moon to write something here and there. But it's crazy, But I guess I always give credit to the guys that came before me, man, because you wouldn't be here without them, right?
Exactly. And so when you say you wrote some articles, where were they published?
Sure. Firehouse. So I'm like one of the, I guess you can consider it I'm a contributing editor to Firehouse magazine now. Kind of cool. I've been writing for them for like 2.5, 3 years. Before that, I had a couple in fire engineering. Where I'm from, where I live, where I volunteer is like the Bible Belt of fire engineering, right? You got Wyckoff to the north, and they full of Mike, Champo, and all these big names, the Alvarez's. And then on my way to work, I pass, the buildings where all the articles are talked about and developed and things like that. So I don't know. I always just had that. I don't know. I don't want to call it like awkward presence around me, but we've always had these legends in this area growing up as trying to take in all this information, and it's all been good to me. So. And I just kept doing what I kept doing, and somehow it's paying off little by little.
I love it.
Again,
That's great.
I'm the kid that fails high school English, but ends up, I'm that oxymoron of person out there. But
I'm a high school dropout, so I'm a proud GED.
There you go.
So then now you have your podcast that you do, the Flow and Vent.
Sure.
Now you don't do that alone. You have other people that work with you on that. Who are
right.
they?
So we got like a big cadre, but the main players. You got Mikey and Mike, right? So you got Mikey Ferrara, who's he's a close friend of mine. He's a chief in town here. He's the strong Italian voice behind the podcast that likes to rip me apart. Then you have Mikey Imperos. He's almost off probation at work. Finally got hired by us, but he's like my tech guy, right? The story with me and him, which makes it unique. And it was fun talking the last couple of weeks as he was in the class for the water rescue this week at work. And he's more of our tech guy. Like at one point, he was helping out his family business, or he's Italian and Polish, so he's got connections everywhere. So one of his linear family paths, he was a DJ, for family parties and stuff. So he had the board. Now he's got the Roadcaster podcast board. So he's our guy with that. But it's just fun to always bounce ideas and just to see how he's evolved now and how he's grown.
Yeah.
When I was a lieutenant, when my mom was living closer to that firehouse in Mawa, I joined there. And when I was at LT, he just joined, same thing, just trying it out. And it's crazy to see, 8, 9 years later, that kid's on the job now, and we're still a good group. We're, still a close-knit group of people. It's kind of fun to see that. Yeah. On top of that, we also got Matt Hillman's been with me to a bunch of conferences, right-hand man behind the scenes of all the medical stuff whenever we do rescue work, or, when we do the man versus machine and all the impalements, like he's my guru on that. The kid's been career EMS his whole life. Still a volley fireman, loves that, but he's there. Then we have Chad, Shadows a paid guy in the next town over. Same thing, jumps in once in a while when he can. You got Dave. Dave's another guy that's been popping in on a couple episodes. He was on the Drago episode. Same thing, just a couple years older than us, different viewpoint on life, and it just brings a different element to the interviews, to the conversations we have. Ben's been on a couple. I mean, like I said, I always say this with the Flow event crowd. You know, if you had any conversations with us, or ideas, or throwing something at us, you're part of it. Even like in the beginnings of the social media world, like there were plenty of people just shredding me to pieces. Like, you know, who are you people? You're garbage. You know, when we had the keyboard warriors, and I was like, you know what, those guys fueled it. You know, just as much as the supporters, because I remember, man, we did a conference out in Ohio, and that was me, Chad, and Mikey, and that's when we first debuted like the squad lecture and the impalement class. Dude, it was horrible. It was the worst experience. You know, you're sitting there, you're teaching, you're like, finally we get to go somewhere. We're like Navy SEALs. We leave here at like 8:00 at night. It was like a 12-hour drive into, you know, the armpit of Ohio. You know, we prep, we got the materials, went to Lowe's to get all the materials to build the props, everything. We go through, we come back, and we're like, that sucked. You know, you're teaching paramedics and like guys that have been, you know, through some shit. And you're like, well, in New Jersey, we don't have that level of, you know, our firefighters for the most part in New Jersey are like first responder level. There's no, unless you're out of the, you know, if you work somewhere else off duty, or, you know, you're not on tour, we're very simple in New Jersey. We like going to fires and just taking care of problems. So going over there, I was like, why am I doing this? You know, some of these reviews were horrendous. It was like, we should just curl up in a bowl and quit.
Wow.
But, you know, it was funny. I don't know, something just hit me, something switched. I mean, and I was like, no, there's no way this is going to die. You know, we're going to keep hustling. And, you know, a couple months later, that's when the fire engineering article rolled out. And again, Mark Reggie was, you know, shot me a message on Facebook. I was like, hey, kid, nice article. You know, I'm the guy that reviewed it and gave it the green light. Shit. Okay, cool. Thanks. Appreciate it. And it's evolved ever since, you know, and then even up until a couple of years ago, we did one up on the border of New York, and same thing. I was like, all right, this small town in Rockland, and I'm like, all right, these guys are like watching a couple older dudes, and like, all right, class is over, and like, oh, we all work at Rescue One. I'm like, oh, wonderful, great. Like New York City or like down the street rescue? He's like, I don't know, in the big city. I'm like, all right, great. The guy's like, nah, kid, like your viewpoint on this is totally fresh and different. You look at it at a different perspective.
Yeah.
That's why I value, you know, that's why I enjoyed what you were bringing to the table. So, I mean, that's the biggest life lesson, right? Life lesson at all is just knowing that, you know, I think 90% of it's just your point of view and how you deliver it and how you take it down. Because all of us don't think alike, you know, everybody's got a different way of looking at things, and you never know who else thinks like you or, you know, wants that fresh input. So, yeah, the podcast, the teaching, the articles has been fun. The Instagram, though, is mainly me, wherever my phone is. So, you know, that's its own. I mean, you see it too. You deal with it too. That's its own beast. Just trying to keep up with that social media flow. But
And like you said too, you do get the keyboard warriors. I talked about it with my lieutenant I had on, Tallheimer, and we talked about you get people who just want to shit all over the content that you bring to the table, and it's good content and it's vetted content, but yet you still get those people that just want to crap all over it, and that's the hard part. And you know, we're going to put ourselves out there in a way. Yeah. Do we ask for it? Yeah. Unfortunately,
part of the beast.
We do this, it's part of the beast, right? We put ourselves out here. We're building a platform. We want to help others. It's mainly why I do it, is because I want to give information. I want to help others to get their voices out. But that's unfortunately going to get people that are going to hate on you. But honestly, if you're pissing off those haters, it's either you're triggering something that inside of them. You talk about workouts, you talk about training. The ones who usually get pissed off are the ones who are not doing it. And so that's why they trip the loudest.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that. There was like one point, one of my boys was snapped on. I did like a really basic like Fire One review for one of the guys in town, and we filmed it, right? You know, your standard baby crawl search, right? Like day one in the textbook. This kid's like, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, why would you post this? This is like completely destroyed me. Meanwhile, like 2 days later, one of the two big magazines posts the same thing with their quality. I'm like, you're going to rip me apart. Meanwhile, Big Brother, you know, the forefathers are doing it. So I get it. It's not the right thing. I'm sure we can all agree on, like, the on your fours crawl is, you know, not going to help anyone really in a search environment. But at the end of the day, you still got to start somewhere before you start sprinting down the block.
Sure.
So it's good. It's good for camaraderie and character building at the end of the day, but gotta start somewhere,
What was your main push to build the platform of your podcast?
Sure.
And how did you come up with the name?
So the Flow event was honestly, so my buddy Pete's he's down in Maryland now. He grew up with me up in this area. So we were just bantering back and forth back in this is how naive this was. We were like either seniors in high school and he went to a different high school, but we were all volunteers in the same region. Cause like when you do that stuff in high school, like, yes, we're all like, school A, school B, but it all turns into its own, lifestyle and network. But one day we're sitting there like, just this kid was smart. He ended up going to Maryland to do a lot of engineering stuff, and I went like the artsy route with film and American studies and all this other stuff. But he put together a bunch of stuff, and at one point we started putting out information. While he was at school, he was putting together little blogs and little articles that we were putting out. And at one point, he's like, "Oh, New Age Fire Tactics." It was a book with a flame, with like a Seagrave logo or something. And then we're just like, "That's dumb." We just went back and forth, and he was like, "We're looking at each other, we're on a flow and vent," and we're like, honestly, for some reason, that's clicking. But it's like, think about it. You flow, you put the fire out, you vent, don't put the fire out. I'm like, yeah. And then from a nerdy standpoint, like you're literally flowing ideas and venting out problems. So it kind of clicked. Then, like I mentioned, Matt, his now wife came up with the logo. She's a graphic designer. And we were like, we need something simple. And it just clicked. It just worked. And even when it first came out, I was like, damn. Again, I'm in the same boat as you. Like this was always, there's zero money in this. If we ever like took a tally of everything, we're super negative, beyond negative in this whole project, in this whole culture of whatever we're doing. But even like then I was like, damn, like that's not swaggerific. That's got no clickiness to it. But the more I look at it, I'm like, this is actually sick. It's survived now 12, 13 years,
Wow.
like even more. I mean, we officially say 2013 was like the birth of it, but we're looking at high school. I mean, it's going to date us for some listeners, but like I graduated 2010 in high school. So, I mean, you're looking at 15 years of this, and like realistically since 2013 when it really got the ball rolling, once we like restructured it, rebranded it, and it's pretty cool to actually see it. But yeah, same thing. Like the idea was just there to flow ideas out for everybody in our region. We came in a time where it was really unique around here, right? Cell phones were coming out. I mean, the cell phone was out, but like that social media, that like the availability of media at your fingertips was really starting to blow up. What did for us, it was YouTube, and you watch like Kentland videos, PG videos, and like old, table talk, fire engineering minutes. That's all we had at that point. So, I mean, I always remember like reading up on there were a couple pages out there, like First Do Tackle was like a big rescue guy that was putting out charts and ideas and just graphics and things like that I was always looking up on. So then I was like, why don't we just start putting this together? And it was honestly like literally a venting thing just to see where it would go, where it would stick. And who knew that years later, people would be like, hey, you want to come speak here about what? Oh, well, what you're talking, I don't know what I'm talking about. But, maybe it's like you said, back to the beginning, right? Different perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the crazy
cool
story behind it. And the podcast just came from a couple of years ago. Mikey was like, we sit here complaining and bitching and talking at the firehouse. Why don't we record this? Maybe somebody else out there may have that same interaction or same understanding that we're going through right now.
That's what I love, like doing with mine, man. It's like, it's just, I want that same concept. The people I'm talking to, I'm like, I always tell them, like, you and I are just talking. It's like we're having a conversation at the firehouse over coffee, but right now we're just doing it via our phones. And if I get to do in-persons, even better, because you can have that more intimate feeling. But like my shit's so easy going. It's not like, I hate to say it, but it's not really all that planned out and that thought out. Like for the most part, it's just like, I love to just get some topics, but then I just want to see what people are talking about. I want to pick their brains, and it's not a structured environment, because I feel like when it gets so structured, then that's where you only can focus on those levels. And then you miss some other things where we talk about the rabbit holes. I love jumping down those holes and see where we go.
And that's what keeps it genuine, right? Because when we can start to roll into this maybe a little bit. Like when you start looking at instructors and speakers and just people you look up to in general, it doesn't have to be fire-based or whatever, from leadership, from sports, whatever you want to call it. Like you want that personal element. You want to see like what's really behind the voice, behind the text. Like, I mean, why do people like, besides test cycles, like why do people read the John Norman and the Vinnie Dunn books? Because when you actually go listen to these guys, they're captivating. Even in now their elderly status, like these guys are still like, you're still listening to them. And it's not just because they survived, they're warriors and all that kind of fun stuff. You're like, oh, this guy knows his shit and I want to listen to him, right? It's not just, oh, he wrote the book that everybody reads. You're vested in it, and that's like, what was I listening to lately? It wasn't the Drago story. Dan, I want to get Polish on you. I don't have the book in front of me. I think it's in my backpack, but it's a book about Blue Angels and whatnot. And it came up last year when I was at the Tech Rescue Conference in New York. One of the speakers was like, hey, this is one of the books that I read. It kind of really helped me about how the Blue Angels think, how they prepare for their flights, the whole process of how those guys operate on the mental level. And I'm reading this book. I'm going through, I'm like, all right, this is starting to make sense. And then like 2 chapters into it, you find out that this guy, he ended up being in charge of one of these squadrons and whatnot. But, like, oh, he went from like nothing to playing football at Colorado to leaving Colorado to go to Naval Academy. Like, for me, that clicked. You're like, damn, this guy's, wow. Like, how do you give up college ball to go be that? Because that's what he wanted to do. He set his mind for that. But, bringing it back to here, like, I think that's all of us at the end of the day that have all these platforms. Like, it's not, it's not about the money. It's not about like, if somebody's making money, please, I could use a dinner or some diapers. I could use some diapers for the kid. But, I think we all have the same mentality there. It's like, the folks that have a good firehouse, a good culture, the people that they want to work for, work with. It's the same thing here. Like you can weed out guys that are like, I'm not going to give you a shout out unless I'm paid for it. Okay.
Yes.
Well, there's not many pages that exist because of that. And if they do, they're kind of defunct. It's the same thing in the firehouse. Like, I'm not going to really work with that guy because he's going to burn me on a vacation day or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, the rabbit holes, man, they're good. You never know where they're going to lead.
Do you feel that the podcast world for the fire service is becoming oversaturated? Or just in general,
no.
like,
Sure.
just like even podcasts or all the stuff we see, especially on Instagram, and the other platforms, do you feel it's becoming oversaturated? Like when you scroll through, is that all you see?
Sure.
Because I know for me, like, I love the information that's out there. I love seeing what's going on, but man, it becomes overwhelming. It is like your senses start just getting oversaturated, and I had to shut down for a while because there's just too much coming at me.
No, for sure. I think that's going to sound really nerdy, but I think it's unfair for me to say like no, or that it's overkill for some people, because some people are trying to make it. So that's like, I guess, a curveball there. But do I feel that there are too many starting to pop up? Yes and no. But I have noticed, especially with our group right now, looking at it, like in our chat of how many people are in it now, like every day is like, what's the new update of tags and hashtag? Like, it's great to see more and more people. And what I like, one thing I love about it is that everybody's sticking to themselves and their identities, right? So it's not like you'll have brands A through Z all doing interviews about the engine company, right? Everybody's got their own niche. And I think what's been great about it recently is that everybody, like you, like me, have our own personal traits and characteristics that are being pushed through the pages and the brand, whatever you want to call it. The brand is the podcast, the recording. Sure. And that's what's making it good. The oversaturation thing, I'll take on a personal side of things as well. Like sometimes, man, I just got to put the phone down, and just
that's
be like,
kind of what I mean. Like, I just feel like there's so much. And like, I love all the information that's out there. Like you just said, like everyone has their own little niche. And even podcasts or the other social media platforms, whatever people are presenting, there's some really good information out there, and they all present in a different way. And I love seeing it. But there's definitely times I'm like, wow, I can only see so many fire-related things because the algorithms, right? And it just pops up in your face. And even today, I'm like, I got to put this down. Like, it is just literally my eyes, my brain is just becoming overwhelmed.
And it's such a double-edged sword, right? So for like people like, let's call it the people behind the pages, and just a general person out there, like, you got to put the phone down sometimes because it just burns you. Because you'll be like, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. Or let's be real, we're all type A personalities. We might be all on the same team and brothers, but also there's sometimes you're like, damn, this guy got that guy to talk to him. And I've been asking him for 6 years
so
to talk to him.
Say that, dude. It's so funny you say it because that's really, I've done that. I've been like, oh man, he got that guy. I wanted to do that. I wanted to talk to that person. Shit. So, and I'm just, like, but it's almost because you nailed it, dude. Like, it is that alpha level, that is that competitive nature that we have. Right. And there's just going to be those times you're like, shit, man, I that was my thing and I wanted to do that. He beat me to it. But you're happy for them and you listen to it and you support them, but you're just like, shit. And man, I was gunning for that. But
and I mean, the algorithms are crazy too, because it's like, oh, they're changing them. They don't change them. One day it's all hashtags. One day it's who you like. Like, I run a lot of, for my volleys and for work and everything, the personal pages, this page is something. It's like, even when you delete one cache, nothing switches over. Then you have another page that you're working with for your volleys, and you have a committee that runs that page. One dude's looking at wacky shit in left field. You're like, you know what, just put the phone down. I don't want to deal with it. It's good and bad. These things are great, but horrible for us as well. But I think at the same time, I think we've been lucky in the fire service where I want to say a couple years ago, there was like not a big, but a noticeable trend of like overkill of people trying to make it. And I'm not knocking anybody for trying, but there was so much like imitation pages popping up where people were just like hustling one another's posts and slapping a sticker on it. And it wasn't genuine. So it was like almost like it was like social sort of, it was like tabloid. You know, it was almost like you were trying to just be the first one to put something out there with no message, just, oh, look,
and you got to vet that too. Like you just said,
right.
like you're racing to get that information out because you want your page to be the first one that posts it, but you didn't vet the information.
Right,
So
now what?
Now what? Now you have your foot in your mouth and you got to redact the information and make an apology. And it sucks because you want everyone to get that information, but you also want to have your name next to it saying, yeah, you know, the C.A.N report, he just posted this amazing fire or the biggest news, and all of a sudden it turned out to be flop, and it's like, oh, he didn't do his homework, he's just posting bullshit information. Now you lose that credibility. And even like articles you write, right? When you write an article, you have to vet that information because, you know, masses are going to be reading that, and it's not just people who are new in the service. This is people who are vetted.
Everybody
years in. The people you look up to are watching or reading. And if you post shit that's not vetted and actually you did your data and your homework on it, they're going to see it, and it's their job to call you out on it. That's when I respect people to call me out. If I post something or write something that's completely bullshit and somebody say something, right? Like, that's not right. Like, no, you got that wrong. I'll take it. Absolutely. Because I respect that. Writing articles, definitely, like, you can read that. You start from the top to the bottom. So you have all the information. That's where I think it's truly vetted. When you jump into a 30-clip video of somebody flowing and moving, you don't get the big picture. You only get that little clip. So you don't know what they did the whole day. So that's, you know, vetting that information and understanding where it started and where it's ending, I think is so important. And because we live in that world where we have it in the palm of our hand, and we're only getting that middle clip of what they were doing, you can't see how they got to that point. So
and I think it's all of us, right? We've always posted something. Like, there's so much stuff that I'm finding, like, this was sick. Post that 10 seconds, right? Just for that specific moment. I mean, it could be something as simple as dipping the blade into a roof, just to explain, like, hey, asshole, you used the wrong blade. We know it's the wrong blade, but I'm showing you what happens when you take your basic tip, you know, a metal saw to a shingle roof, and how much of a mess it makes. And everybody just jumps on, it's wrong. I know it's wrong. Read the one sentence that's after it, because it tells you, please don't do this. If you do this, should you get through it, you might be able to do it, but you should probably use the right equipment. So it's like, it's everywhere.
It is.
Oh, but that's what makes this whole beast fun. You know, it's crazy. You got to feed the beast.
You do, because people want the information, and I love giving it. Like the last episode I just posted, it was not a fun topic, but it was such a topic that is so informative that a lot of people don't know about line of duty deaths and how to get your paperwork out, what you need to fill for your beneficiaries. That's something we don't talk about, right? And especially on social media platforms, that's something you never talk about.
Nobody knows, right?
Right. You don't talk about the paperwork that you need to cover your ass or your family when the bad shit happens. You know, we talk about throwing ladders, we talk about flowing and moving, we talk about cutting cars, we talk about working out and nutrition, which is all the things we need to know about. But that particular part of that information, a lot of people don't know about, or they come from departments that don't do it because they just don't know yet. So it's great that we're giving this information, and I'm truly blessed that we get to do it and live in a world that we can have the platform to do it. And I do think it takes balls to do it though, too. Like, because everyone could say like, oh, anyone could just, you know, point a camera and talk into it, but you have to speak intelligently. You have to vet the data. You have to be thoroughly read of what you're presenting, because if you don't, people will see right through it and they're going to not listen. You're just going to be talking to a wall, and then and you would walk around and it's going to be like, you're a big idiot because you don't do your homework.
And especially with that, I mean, look how we're going. Like, what's crazy about it as well too is like how tight we all are. And I mean, I'm talking like the whole social media world. That if one person totally jacks up something, everybody's credibility starts to get chipped or questioned. It's literally that whole scenario of like, well, this guy's connected to all these people that are big dogs, and now he's a problem. Everybody's going to get hit with something eventually. So it's, like you said in the beginning, just keeping each other, that's the beauty of it, is, keeping each other in check. It makes a big difference down the line for everybody.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I totally agree. It was, it's good that you're putting that kind of stuff out as well in the last part of the episode, because who knows about it? Like when we went through it, our line of duty was a little unique when it was a COVID related one. But again, still, like, I just overheard the drama that our brass was dealing with on just trying to do. So it was a different time too, a couple of years ago, but like just trying to get that paperwork done and to get the benefits, to get this, I was like, geez, who teaches who to do that? Nobody. Even when you got 30 years on the job, like, was it really covered? Like you said, some places do it, some places don't. Some places don't even know that it exists, unfortunately, until, they're knocking on your door for papers. So,
yeah,
it's a crazy world. But we just
is.
keep pushing, man.
So you're definitely big into teaching. Obviously, you love to travel. Now, do you go anywhere to learn? So you do a lot of teaching, but where do you go to learn?
I've always had this like personal mindset is all training is good training, even if it's bad training, right? So I try to go to whatever I can get, especially now with life. One thing I always did growing up was, I got my balls busted pretty hard for this, but I took any class I could get, right? Growing up in my area, you took Fire 1, Fire 2. If you took Fire 2 before 5 years, it was like a crime. If you took the fire, because you got to get experience. If you took the fire officer class before 10 years, it was like, who is this guy? You got no time in the volunteer world. And now we know the differences between volunteer and career worlds and all that kind of drama. But like, it was always like a jab. I think it could have been just the environment I was in at the time, because that culture has since changed. Now it's like, whatever class you want, just go get it. For me, man, I like to go anywhere. If I have an opportunity to go to one of these big shows, I'll sit. Even when I go present, I make it a point to either stay early, to come early or stay late, and go sit in sessions and, just sit in the back and listen. Like, I'm a nobody. I'll be the first one to tell you, whenever I go to these shows, like trades or whatever, like I just like to get in and listen for free, and not to be that guy. But like, if I'm there anyway, why not go get a class into something? Joey D weekend, if I'm available, I always try to get out there on Long Island.
Were you there just this previous year?
Not this. When did I go?
Because I was at that one.
Maybe not this year. No, I might have gone this year. Dude, I'm not this year. I went the year before. So not this last November, the prior November I went to the first one. That foundation's been crazy for me, just knowing, Chief Joey, Senior. Like when I started on my volley house, I put in for the grant, and we got it and started a conversation with him. And again, me not knowing that this whole, that Joey D himself was very involved in this area, and it was my mentors, and just seeing, when Andy, like I posted a photo, I posted a photo, I don't know if it was a story or a regular post of Joey D's anniversary. And it was a picture of him, one of my big mentors, John Lewis, a lot of the guys from like the FDIC world back then at Andy Frederick's, I guess, repast at Suffer, which is 2 towns away. So for me, I'm always like, wow, like everybody knows everybody. Yeah. So, going back to like where I go to learn, I go to whatever's available. And I'm not trying to be like, I'm not picky, man. Unless if there's a topic that I love, I'll go obviously pick, today I got the thing for ropes. I'm going to go to rope class. But if I can get into a class that's local and I can make it with my life schedule, and just, having a family and little man at home, like I'm in for anything and everything. I'm pretty easy, even if it's just a bullshit, fool's event locally at a bar or something where they're just speaking an hour, 2 hours, I'm in, because you never know what you're going to pick up. That's the biggest thing too, is, sometimes it could be something monumental and you get a big name. Sometimes you have somebody from a small town, Podunky, but their story is going to be extremely critical and vital to what you're going to deal with the next time, or, something like that. So I think that's the way I'm programmed. And I think it's helped out because, you can't really judge others before sitting through their program and knowing about them, right? And that's the other catch-22 on being a speaker, being an instructor, or whatever, or a social media person, if you want to call us that, even, is like, you can sit through somebody's stuff, like we were going earlier with like these articles and things like that, but you have to be able to listen, digest it, and then learn more about the speaker, right? Because my biggest thing is like, my personal thing is coming from where I come from, my truck companies are 3-man trucks, right? So you have an officer, a guy driving, and a guy in the back. If you're on the tiller, he's 50 feet away from you on your own. if you're in the tower, he's sitting behind you. But when we operate, as the officer, I'll go inside, my chauffeur goes to the roof, and my tillerman goes to the rear and does OV stuff until the conditions become favorable enough where he can get inside and meet up with me. So like one thing that I've got is like, I always want to teach, low man truck company stuff, but being in this neck of the woods, it's always a brother from the alphabet soup next door. You get Matt or somebody teaching something good on truck work, but it's a different environment when you start learning and listening to people. Like, where are you? How do you operate? I mean, shit, half of our group, there's guys that run like 1 or 2 man companies, and you're like,
Yeah,
that guy's really putting in work on his own. No. So I know I went down another rabbit hole, but I mean, listen, if anybody's got training, I'm in there. I'll tell you the first thing, like, I have a reading comprehension that is horrible, but I've learned to like just love all these books. And from Collapse to, it doesn't even have to be a technical book. Like upstairs, like I said, the Drago one for me was obviously its own connection, but you get like the Van Essen books, any of those, like his was like Strength of Heart or something like this. Joey DiToronto like put out the, not Joey, Gino put out that book, his version of Nights in New York or something, this quicker little read. He's half a family friend of mine through my wife and whatnot. And like, I didn't know he was involved in some of these crazy fires, in his career. So, man, I think the best advice for everybody is just try to learn and read. Have an open mind. You never know. Because again, you go to some of these big conferences and listen, we could all hit one another and say, why is this guy teaching this class? Is it because he's connected? Is he hooked? Is he just been on the circuit forever?
Yeah.
Or does he actually have something legit to say? And maybe that's why he's holding on to it or, involved in that thread kind of thing. So hopefully that kind of brushed it up where people think that Rob's crazy after that answer,
You mentioned the Fools.
Sure.
How active is what is the name of your Fools chat?
So I was a member of the What Exit Fools down in mid Jersey, the shore area. After being there for a little bit, I was with their T&E. And then obviously with this Metro group that Peyton let us kind of get involved in on the social media side. I really felt with the guys up here to start our own, just because this group of guys was just always hounding to do stuff, whether it was through Flow Event or honestly on our own, we were doing stuff as just like when I was going through for one of my first task force evaluations, I was hanging out with Matt, and he's a New York guy. And he was just putting me through the reps of what he went through, what they do on the New York Task Force 1 side of things as rescue guys. So eventually we're sitting here, I'm like, what am I like? I love the guys on What Exit. I love everything about us, but why don't we start our own? So we started the Liberty Fools up here in the northeast, whatever. Our mutual aid's called the Northwest Bargain, but really it's the northeast side of New Jersey on the border of New York. And, the Fools at the international level have their rules of, 45-minute drives between chapters and things like that. But New Jersey is dense as hell, man.
Yeah.
So getting to work 6 miles could be a 2-hour commute some days. So we started up the Liberty Fools, and so far we're only in like the infancy stage, man. But, what was crazy about it was like, even when we set up the e-board, like with the people that I reached out to, it was like, you got a retired New York City guy, a current New York City guy that's also in Rockland. You got myself and Mikey, who are like this Bergen clique, but I'm in Passaic as well. And then we got Dave, a young officer that's phenomenally talented with experience from the corporate world. So, he'll keep it. So we have a very good, in my book, balanced board. It's not just everybody from one firehouse. It's got that whole environment of, everybody can hit on something. And even in the first, so we launched it the end of February 28th. So we really launched like mid-January. We only started taking apps like right before Valentine's. So 2 weeks ago, I think we're hitting like the 40-45 mark this week on applications.
Nice.
And now where it's like, everybody said, you got to have this standard crazy structure before. I was like, no, dude, we're going to do it like kind of old school, more of that fraternal, not college fraternized style, but like that whole social side of thing with training added to it back and forth. Because it's just, there was such a need for it here. You have so many people that even talking like up at the academy, a lot of the senior instructors that have been there 40 years, the guys are great. They're like, hey, I was an original Jersey guy until, that chapter moved a little more south or whatever, or what have you, where they just couldn't be involved. And they're like, hey, I'll switch over if I'm still active in the system. I think it's going to be a good couple of years, because, for me, it was cool being involved in the Jersey crowd and the Jersey Shore crowd, the What Exit guys. But it wasn't until I went to SUSAR in November to teach down there at that conference where I finally got to hang out and talk with Walt. And, Walt's John's brother. So there's that whole family connection from here. And, he's one of the charter like fools. Like he's legit one of the top 8 guys. So, I'm sitting here. I'm like, I've met all these folks. I've been had the opportunity to, like literally call them like, I don't know, like super mentors, like family.
Sure.
So I'm like, what better way to say thanks than to start another chapter in their own backyard where they grew up, So again, we've got guys from all over. There's like one gentleman that came from Long Island, one guy that's like south of Lake George because it's closer to here than to New England's. And he's just straight up, he's like, dude, I'd rather drive 2 hours south than 4 hours northeast. I'm like, I don't care. And that's the way I looked at it. Because even our secretary, Vinny, was like, where do we draw the line? I'm like, honestly, man, we're just like what Exit was, man. If I don't care about the name, where you go. I don't care if you were my neighbor and you want to go somewhere else. Whatever you believe in, I'm easy. And if you want to be with a group of guys that you want to go, enjoy it. You're all going to work together at the end of the day. We're still cross-sharing everybody's information and events. So I'm excited to see where this goes, man, because, even in the first wave of applications, there's a lot of guys that have just moved on. Not moved on, but have moved and relocated in life that were charter members of other chapters that are now here. So now I'm like, damn, this is really helping out potentially having guys that know what they're doing already jump right in. And there's no like, hey, this is what we got to do kind of thing. Like everybody's got the same mindset of just like, let's get back together, bring it back old school, hang out, share some stories, tips and tricks, maybe some good network opportunities for some guys, both career, volunteer, man. Maybe there's some volleys that want to go career and like, being around that environment, maybe they want to roll into that. Maybe we can make an opportunity there. Or hey, training's lacking on in this subject. Let's bring it in. Let's make it happen. And what's the cool thing as well is like looking at the group so far, like it's very heavy in known instructors. I'm not talking like top of level like Vinny Dunn, John Norman kind of guys, but there's a lot of dudes that have been instructors that are part of this chapter. You're like, damn, we could be pretty good just making a wave in our own backyard.
Yeah.
Bringing things together. So, man, I'm excited to see where this goes. After May, I'll put a lot more attention into it because these next 3 months are crazy. But I think it's good for everybody, man, up here. And especially, like we have all these connections now between all of our chapters on the Eastern Seaboard. Like it's really, I think, coming back to that basic, like super well-connected network. It's, who knows what could happen.
Yeah.
Future will tell.
That. Yeah. So have you been planning any with this group, the new fools, any new trainings that you guys have in the works for? Any kind of?
We're at the stage now where when we get back from Poland, we're going to do our first in-person meeting about the e-board. And this came from Matt. Matt was like, listen, the first thing, dude, keep it simple. Let's all get together. We have a nice brewery over here, in New York. All we're doing is just get together and chat, talk, get together, break that ice together. Training wise, we're probably going to we have a fortunate connection of, we have the local academy here. So we might do like a back to basics kind of day. Everybody does their own version of it. But one thing I'd love to see is just like breaking it down into like, another one of couple of our members or in charge of another burn facility in the region. So, even if we do like a truck day, what to do with like straight up, because no matter if you look at it, career or volunteer, right? Many of our career departments in this area are short staffed, right? 4 or less, in most places 3 or less. Yeah. And the career side of things, they're rolling at that same number. So it doesn't matter what name, what town's on your jacket. You got to know how to operate low. So one of the things my passion behind it is like truck work and a little bit of that rescue work, but that's a whole nother animal over there. So like we've been just toying at one thing Matt and I were going to do a couple of years ago when I was chief and he was a captain in Suffering, was just running, like we were going to call it the 919 day, where it was like, 9 for my town, 19 for his town. And it was just going to be just a back to basics truck work kind of day, forcing entry, throwing ladders, VEF searches, and roof cutting, and just to keep it simple.
Going back to basics.
That's it. You're only going to get better if you know how to hone your basic skills, right? Yeah. They always say like the most technically aggressive rescue and advanced people are proficient at the most basic of the skill. So the only way you're going to get there is by killing it. And if you don't know how to tie your shoes, you're never going to run a mile.
Like Robert Maris says, if you can't truck, you can't writ.
Yeah, right?
Right?
So exactly. It's the same skills. It's the same things. It's just applied differently. And
If you can't throw a ladder, you can't force a door, then you're
not going to do anything.
You're no good to us, and that's the hard truth. And that's why it's really great to get back to basics, because we all need it. There's days getting away, calls getting away where you're not going to, like, I don't have a forcible entry prop in my department. We don't get the forced doors all the time. So when we get it, it's a luxury. And we all love to, we'll spend hours on it when we get the forcible entry prop. And unfortunately, that's something we don't have right now. We're working on it. We're hoping to get a facility built for our department, nice training facility. It's in the works, but, we're not going to see that for a couple of years still. So these trainings, these back to basic trainings, are so valuable just for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a 20-year guy or if you're a 3-month dude. Like, we all need to get those reps in. And I love going to conferences and just doing that stuff. And it's never mundane. As all the conferences I've gone to and getting all the hands-on stuff, it is so worth it, of getting your hands dirty and getting that sweat equity in, and in lectures as well. I love sitting in classrooms and listening to people who are passionate about the job and got new things to tell me. Listen to Andrew Starnes talk, that is amazing information that he gives, and he gives it all. And then he goes even further and talks about his personal information, the knowledge that he's gained through life. He gives that all to us. So talks about family, talks about, the mistakes that he's made and the reason why he was so heavy into thermal imaging cameras. Like, he talks about the mistakes that he made and he learns about it. And then he became attached to that area. So that way nobody else makes the same mistakes that he did. It's just awesome to listen to so much knowledge out there. And I can listen to his classes all the time. And even if it could be the 20th class, I'll still get something new out of it. And that's what's so much fun about going to these conferences. And even you said the simple trainings, the basic trainings, because there might just be a new way that I've never seen before. And so, because there's always new people presenting new ways to do things. And that's what keeps us fresh.
And then, like, on the opposite side of things, like, last year, and this isn't Fools related, but the same people that ran the Saddle River Valley Rescue Weekend, per se, are the same guys that are in this new Fools group. But, for the more advanced side of things, up here, we got another thing that's lacking like crazy is just, New Jersey's unfortunately infamous for it. It's just like the lack of standardized rescue training, right? New Jersey's like the mafia of multiple brands, me being, I'm nobody, but I've taught, the man versus machine impalement classes to folks. But, there's so many brands that are out of here that are controlling this is where I'm going to get dethroned from everything I do, but they control the monopoly on the training for technical world. So one thing we started up was this rescue weekend, which, last year's concept was initially 3 days. And then I was like, let's just be real. It's the first one. Let's do a 1 day, 4 stations, an hour and a half per station. Every person that shows up that day gets to go to all 4 stations. Last year we did it where we had ropes. One of the guys from the state, Corey, came in and did a great thing on just, he did just basic rope lines off the aerial, setting up a victim, setting up a rescue with it. Just a fun station. If you're a rope nerd, bread and butter for you. If you have no idea what you're doing, it worked. PJ came with the fast boards just to give the guys a refresher. That was like the only station we had that was fire-based. And then Paratech came in, Chief Bob came up to do, a tree on a car, something that happens often, unfortunately, up here, but just knowing how to use what we use every day with their Paratech runs. And then the last station was like basic torch skills, literally just cutting garbage pieces of metal with the torch. And those were like, again, in theory, very basic, but advanced at the same time for a lot of our folks, because we don't have the luxury. Like you said, we may have doors and you don't have doors. Some places, like, dude, I've noticed, like New York State is phenomenal with putting out, you got to travel a little bit, but their state puts out a calendar of annual trainings throughout the state, and you just log into your LMS system and put requests in to go, whether it's trench, collapse, whatever, throughout the state. Like, we don't have that. So just putting together those 4 little stations, like, made a difference where people are like, wow, this is sick. Like, we had a waiting list and we kept it really PG, man. We had it built for our department only. And then we tried to be very cordial and have like 1 or 2 people per mutual aid department. And the kick with that town is that we're part of 2 mutual aid groups. So instead of having like 10 extra people, it's like 40 extra people.
Yeah.
So, it was unfortunate, but this year we're probably going to stick it to 1 more day. And then after I think the third year might turn into a 2-day thing, or a Friday night and a Saturday, or a Saturday and a Sunday. But like for me, passionately wise, like I love that we were able to pull that off. Because again, me being a rescue nerd, I think, listen, I love crawling down hallways. I love forcing doors. I love tillering. I love, making a cut when I have to. But there's just something more nerdy. And I'm a nerd behind the scenes with the rescue world, right? Whether it's ropes, whether it's water. I mean, water, everybody can go into as its own beast. But like even knowing the ratios and forces and numbers on things when you're talking about collapses and structural and like whether or not you could use certain like struts and things like that, it's just such a game changer of like that next level of knowing. Like, like you said earlier, like who'd you listen to? Who do you want to listen to? And teaching and things like that. Man, growing up, like, here, like you said earlier, it was YouTube growing up. It is what it is. I didn't know much as a junior in high school. I knew like, oh, this guy was a fireman down the block or something like that. But like, we grew up on like my age group and the guys I work with, like all of us grew up on, the still riding documentaries and all those post 9/11 Brotherhood documentaries. And like Liam Flaherty was one of the guys. C.A.N. Metcalf was another guy that was in that documentary. And it was at the first Joey D weekend I went to, like, C.A.N. Metcalf, dude, this dude he was still working. I think he was on one of the Marinas, full, like the guy looked like a Florida guy. He was so tan, huge bushy beard. I'm like, yo, you're that guy from that documentary I grew up watching, Then I'm looking and I'm watching, I came back a couple years later to do the advanced stabilization with them and Paratech, and they had, bought Suffolk set up the buses on top of buses with all the Paratech struts. And I totally forgot the guy's name. This is totally losing my buff card. But, it was a captain. He was or is currently, or probably moved on by now, probably promoted up again, but he was an officer at Rescue 4. But in the documentary, he was the probie. You know what I mean? And I'm like I go on my phone now, like, that was the guy that was like, so for me, I think I like I said, going back to that, I like the real things, keeping it genuine, like learning from those guys that like, listen, the camera, and this could go for anybody, whether you're fortunate enough to be in some kind of documentary like that, or just us with our social media platforms. When you read people, we have those moments of like, hey, somebody's scrolling right now and seeing us talking. Somebody might say, these guys are legit, or these guys are clowns. But when you actually meet us and that quick second, you have so much to take in and understand about that person or that individual or whatever, that team, that company, if you want to go down that conversation too.
So I definitely believe that, man. I love what you're hitting with
like,
that. Yeah.
It's crazy. But
so like when I went to Bears of the Oath, and people are coming up to me and say, hey, you're that dude from the C.A.N. report. Like, yeah, that's me. And it was cool because I don't know. We don't know who's watching and who's gaining that information and if they're enjoying the content. But when I went down there and I met these people who I've never met before, now we all become family, but they were so excited to see me because they said, yeah, I listened to your stuff, man. I love what you're doing. I love what you're saying. And these are kids like 20 years old. They were so excited to see me. But then to also be a student of the craft with them, I'm not there as anybody. I'm a student. I'm forever a student. And they're coming up to me, are you teaching? Are you one of the instructors? Nope. I'm learning because I need to get these skills. I don't do it enough. My department's really busy, but we get more medical calls and motor vehicle accidents than we do get structure fires. So that's just the name of the game. And being able to be down there and throwing ladders, live fire, forcible entry, the whole gamut, flowing and moving, and being what we're doing, it gives them to show them like, I'm not just sitting in front of a camera talking out of my ass. I'm putting in the work with you guys. Right. So I'm there sweating with you. I'm there forcing doors. I'm there flowing and moving. We're doing search. And so it gets that buy in for us as well. Like, so if they see me teaching, yeah, man, I know he knows this shit because he was doing it with me just last week. He was throwing those ladders. He was doing those searches. We were talking about how we're going to stretch this line. What would be better this way? Should we split it? Should we do a Minuteman? And all these things that we talk about, we are applying, but then it gives us that the content that we're releasing, that credibility. And like I said, I made a post before. It's like, you can talk about it or you can be about it. We have to be about it. We can't just sit here in front of the screen and talk, or even instructors. There's instructors that probably haven't put hands on a forcible entry prop in a long time. They just teach classroom, right? They literally just do a PowerPoint, and yeah, they'll know how to speak the PowerPoint. But when it comes to be the hands-on or put on your gear and actually getting that sweat on, that's where really the rubber hits the road. You got to know what you're doing, and you got to present that to them because that's what a lot of people want to see. You could talk about all day long in front of our cameras and behind a keyboard, but you got to get your gear on. You got to use those tools effectively, or that credibility is gone. We could talk about all day long. We talk about standards. We can talk about, solid training, and I could do this for 8 hours all week. But if I'm not doing it and people aren't seeing that I'm actually living that life, how can they actually buy when I'm presenting? How can they actually even, I wouldn't buy what I'm selling. Like if I just sat here and didn't do anything, be like, yeah, that guy's full of shit. He doesn't wear gear. He sits in an office all day, or he sits behind a computer at his house. Like you gotta put in that sweat.
Absolutely. I think that's what's making a lot of these smaller conferences that, that's where the credibility is really starting to skyrocket, right? Because not calling anybody out, it is just how it's coming out, man. Like a lot of these folks that are, not a lot, we could all sit back and flip through your phone and say, this guy does it or this guy doesn't do it, right? Because that's what I like about the small conferences. And a lot of the things that I'm involved in, at like the teaching, whether it's EMS, Fire Pro, or even this New York State conference, I'm involved in a lot of small things, right? I'm not like an FDIC speaker or anything. And I'm cool with that because, like you mentioned, I like being able to sit in the classroom before my session and people are like, wait, that guy was just sitting next to me, like asking questions, trying to get involved, and now he's up there. And I'll be the first one that tells you, like, dude, even when we were at SUSAR last year, I made a comment. I sat through a class, came back out, and like during my presentation, I stopped myself. I was like, that dude was just talking about this and that scenario, and it makes absolute sense that it should be added somewhere in the slides because I just learned that from a guy that's been doing this a lot in Miami. I haven't seen what you guys have done, but now you're listening to me. But it's not about that. It's about what we're all learning and how do we, like you said, bring this message and bring these concepts and ideas up to benefit everybody. Not everything is going to work universally around the world or in any discipline, but you never know what you could take away from. Like I said, for me, like my aha moment was when I taught at SUSAR. Again, it was man versus machine and impediments, just my bread and butter. And the Canadian Task Force 1 guys came up a fucking slew of questions on how to operate. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. Then 2 kids from Miami-Dade came up to me, and like, to me, being in this region of Northeast, like, like California's top dog, Miami-Dade is known to be legendary. Yeah. And I'm like, this dude's asking me questions on like certain, like how I use my tools and what my little tricks are. No way. Yeah. So again, credibility is, like they say, with just like your fires, you're only as good as your last fire. And it comes down to what we do with everything. Like, you're only as good as your last article, your last podcast, like how you hold yourself, right? If you are not a good dude, people are going to read right through it. We're going to hit on that again.
Yeah.
But if you're genuine, and plenty of times you get, somebody questions you, and if you handle it the wrong way, you're going to get smoked the same way. But if you own up to it and you get the knowledge and information through back and forth, just going to make everybody better at the end.
I love it. Yep. Like we're bringing back training up here in the north, in New Hampshire. We have a conference coming up in May, Monadnock Fire Conference, and we haven't had something like that in a long time. And the people that are teaching, what I love is this is a grassroots fire conference. This is a New Hampshire grassroots. We have guys who are teaching from that general area. I've been blessed and honored to be invited to teach. I live like 40 minutes away, so it's even better. And it's in the Keene area. So it's just, they're bringing back something that people used to love to talk about years ago. We had an old training ground from my neck of the woods called Meadowwood. And that's where like my father-in-law used to teach because he was on the job for 28 years. That's where he got his education. And that's where he then brought it back and would teach the younger guys. And it kind of just fizzled away and it stopped. And then these guys realized we need something up here. So they brought it back, and we got a slew of instructors, mainly from the Keene area. The Monadnock Fire Conference is in the Keene area, and the guys have asked me to be a part of it for flowing and moving. I love doing hose work. I love engine work. So I get to do a lot of everything that I learned from all the other fire conferences. I get to bring that knowledge to people maybe who haven't seen something, right? So should I learn in Georgia, Texas, Arkansas, Florida, I get to bring it up to the guys here. It's a back to basics. It's grassroots. It's back to basics. This is not an advanced fire training conference. This is literally for anyone and everyone that wants to get the reps in and maybe learn some new stuff as well. And it's not to make anybody feel inferior. Again, this is to make everybody better. And we haven't had a good New Hampshire fire conference this tight, this caliber for quite some time. And the guys that are bringing it back, Jake Poulin, Dan Noel, these guys, they're on the job in Keene and they're bringing that shit back. And I'm so excited that we finally have something we can brag about up here. We have a good, strong Fools chapter in New England area. Rusty Ricker does a great job. But this is separate from that. And it's, again, like where it's all the hometown boys that get to do it. And there's going to be ladders. There's going to be water flowing, forcible entry. They're doing medical SWAT.
Nice.
They're doing EMS tracks, which is super cool. This guy, I had him on my podcast before, Captain Joe Stalker. He's up in the Hooksett area. He's their EMS captain, and he's really into the EMS active shooter.
Sure.
So he's doing the active shooter preparedness. Joe Stalker and Brendan Kinnery, they're doing a lecture and lab, and that's something you don't usually get in a lot of those conferences. You don't do active shooter trainings.
Yeah,
and so,
for sure.
It's a big deal. We train a lot on that actually, and on this area are always involving that into our trainings, at least in my department. So it's, again, everyone's bringing something back, something that everyone loves, the passion that they have. It's now being built, and it's going to be an amazing week of everybody just getting together and dropping knowledge, students dropping knowledge, instructors dropping knowledge. And it's small enough, again, what we talked about, where you can have those small conferences and I'm going to sit at a table next to somebody who I've never met and they don't know who I am. And then we're going to go out into the drill yard and I'm going to show them how to do some flow and a movement. And they'll be like, wait a minute, you were just sitting next to me. Right. So that's that cool part of it. It's like, no one's better than anybody. And to be able to like sit there with everybody else and just absorb that knowledge and then be able to be like, yeah, man, you're sitting next to me here. I want to show you this. Like, let's go out and do it. How many reps you want to get in? That's the cool part of it. Because sometimes those really, really big conferences, you don't get a lot of reps. You gotta do the evolution
in and out,
and then move on. Yeah. So I love that smaller conferences where you can get those reps in and you can get some good solid work. And like, if you screwed up throwing the ladder, hey, can I do that one more time? I messed it up. Yeah. Take as much time as you want. So
absolutely.
I love that stuff, man. And I was in Arkansas at the First Inc. Conference, and I was at the table with all the dadgum guys. And what impressed me the most, what I gathered the most, was all the information that was being shared in that room. But I looked over, and Tom Pollock, every day, there was 3 days lecture, and every day he had a notebook, and he was so tuned in to what every presenter was saying, and he was writing everything down. And this is a guy who teaches all over, and he's such a valuable source of information. And there he is, just constantly writing everything down, absorbing as much as he can. And another guy, Matty Garcia, same thing. He's got his tablet up and he's writing everything. He missed something. He's like, dude, what did he just say? I need that information. And again, this is a guy who teaches all over the place. And these guys are just like, didn't want to miss anything. They couldn't wait to absorb all that information. So you can never stop. Once you stop, right? Once you stop,
hang
like,
it
I
up.
don't need it. Yeah, hang it up. You're done, right? So, those are the people that motivate me and inspire me. When I see people that just love to learn and they're constantly absorbing it, because like I can't say enough, the fire service is constantly evolving. It's fluid. It's not stopping. It's not static. Something's always going to be changing where we got to learn. We got to roll with the punches. And seeing people like that, seeing people like you that are always the student of the craft, that's what keeps us going.
For sure. And I think you're absolutely right there. Like when you mentioned, right, guys taking notes, like those are definitely, like, I always say, like, make yourself dangerous, right? Like even now, like taking a quick second, I think back, like times where I've got the opportunity to speak, like, dude, there are dudes there with notepads. So like, oh yes, on a podcast, on a social media thing, you can go back and rewatch something. But in the moment, if you're not keen, if you're not tuned into like what somebody's saying, don't waste your time. Because there could be somebody sitting there that's like, I'm going to take this back and it might save a life. It might change how we operate or something like that. But you got to do it, man. You got to be all in. You got to take notes. You got to be involved. Because if you're not, you're doing a disservice to the system, man.
And you're absolutely right. You got to take it seriously. And I was victim of this. I was just guilty as too. Like there was I think it was like my first time going to Pensacola, the County Fire Tactics. Mm-hmm. And I went out with I think it was like the second or third night, and went out to the bars, and I drank way too much. The next morning, I was useless. I couldn't sit in class. I couldn't focus. I was so tired. I was so hungover. It wasn't my best moment, but I had to go up and lay down and take a nap because I just couldn't do it anymore. And I missed out on a good presentation. And ever since that day, I'm like, I'm never doing it again. I'm here for a purpose.
Right.
I don't mind socializing, and I'll definitely have some drinks with people, but it's not a party to me. Like, it is education. And now, especially, like, this was all out of my pocket, but especially if your department's paying for it, like, you owe it to your department. If they're investing money into you,
right,
to get that education because they want you to bring it back, and you treat it like a social event, like a party, and you didn't gather any information, you were hungover the whole time, you didn't put in 100% on the drill yard because you drank your brains out, like, you're doing a disservice to you. You're doing a disservice to your fire department. Again, they're spending money on your flights, your hotel, the registration fee. And there's a lot of people that don't get that. Like, my department would pay for some things if they can, budget-wise. Sometimes they can't, and it's not their fault. So I'm going to spend that money. And especially if I'm spending the money too, like, I'm not wasting that. I'm not a millionaire.
Right.
So if I'm going to spend the money, now I'm actually going to pay attention. Because again, like, when I did it the first time, I was like, man, I missed a really cool class. I paid attention pretty much the whole week, but it was just that one class I missed, and it was like, I was kicking myself for it because I really wanted to hear what that person had to say. So
yeah, and that's a big thing, man. Yeah, it's funny, you mentioned it perfectly, and I thought about all these times, like, when we put in that time and effort, like you said, I'm in the same boat. Like, nobody pays for anything around here. It's out of your own pocket. So now with my phase in life, like, when I'm away for a day or two or whatever it is, it's like, it's not just a burden on your time, but like your family. Like, go study, learn. Like, don't waste that opportunity because you're gonna come back and do what? I had a vacation for 3 days. No, you're fucking learning. You have to be on top. You have to be on point. And you never know who you're gonna meet. You never know who you're gonna listen to. I mean, yes, you can pick and choose your speaker sometimes, but you never know what message gets across and how it's going to relate to you.
Yeah. And it's like I tell, like, the when I'm teaching at the academy, I always tell them, we all say it. Every day's an interview. And even as a fresh cadet or a seasoned Jake, every day's an interview. If you go out and you're doing these conferences and you're not presenting your best, especially in the drill yard, and you look like shit and you're performing like shit, how are you representing your department, right? And what kind of name are you giving yourself and your department when you're on these drill yards? Either you're not taking it seriously and you're joking around, you're disrespecting those instructors if you're a ass it, and you're not paying attention and you just care about class breaking so you can go to the bar. And I'm not against about socializing and networking and having some drinks, but you also, when it comes to putting in that work, you gotta get out there and take it seriously, because sometimes, especially the smaller conferences, some of these dudes don't get paid. These guys, they're coming, they're sacrificing as well. They're sacrificing their family time.
A lot of it's free. Guys don't see it.
Exactly. They might get their hotel rooms paid for or travel arrangements, but other than that, there's no pay. They do it because they love it. And same thing for me. Like, when I get asked to teach something, the money doesn't matter to me. I just love giving something back. And if one person gets it, or 5 people get it, or 20 people, it's all worthwhile to me. That's my payment. I always say, like, I love teaching, dude. When I show somebody how to flow with water, or a technique of holding the nozzle differently, or throwing the ladder better, or just moving in their gear, and they were struggling, and all of a sudden they turn around and they're doing exactly what I just taught them to do, and it works for them, and they turn around and smile. Man, that's it. That's my moment. That's my paycheck right there. That's $1,000 for me right there. I don't care. I can't use that to buy anything, but that satisfaction that person who was struggling got it, and now they're going to remember and they're going to share it down the road. Yeah. That's payment in my bank, man. I love it.
Absolutely. 100%. Because even like, I always look back lately, like, with John, because again, going back to my thing, like, when I took my volley fire one, it was a mix. I took a day class, so it was like half career, half volunteer. One of our instructors was John Lewis, and full circle. Like, that's the only reason I feel like I even got involved in where I'm at now. And it's like, even now lately, he's always like, "Hey, did you ever do this project for me, or did you do how's it going? You still studying, kid?" Like, I saw him last week. He was doing up here in the volleys. He was doing another class for another town that we all got to we got the mooch off of. But same thing. He's just like being able to go back and teach and like give another kid that opportunity. I think besides Mikey being a flow event kid and a family friend now, like, I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like, we're seeing him get hired now, and like, he's coming off probation. We know he's going to go work hard to get to the truck. I think that's the awkward, not awkward, but like that full circle moment of like why why we do this. Why do we keep pushing Flow Event? Why do we keep teaching? Why do we keep going to these small conferences for nothing? Because it's about the bigger picture, right? It's not, like you said, it's not about the paycheck. Yes, it's nice to get a dinner with whomever and have a hotel room once in a while, but it's not about that. It's about getting there, meeting people, growing the network, because you never know where opportunities are going to take you. You got to take those opportunities when they're presented, you know, it's the way it is.
Yeah, man. So anything else you got for me, Rob? We've covered a good amount of area here, and it's been a lot of fun.
I think this one's going to be a good one to listen to. You got, you know, like an encyclopedia on me. You got conferences coming up in the region by you, by me, and we're across the country, international touchdowns, and, you know, concepts galore. So I think this was good, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course, man. Yeah, I got, we have the Northeastern Fire Summit coming up. Geez, I think in like 2 weeks.
There you go.
The New England Fools puts it on every year. It's at Wells, Maine. We have a lot of great presenters. I just had Rusty Ricker on talking about that. So I'll be up there recording my content, interviewing. We got Clyde Gordon, A.B. Turin, Aaron Heller, Matty Johnson. Whew, man, we got a lot. So that's going to be a good weekend.
It's going to be a good time for sure.
It's going to be great, dude. And I can't say enough for being honored to and blessed to be able to go up there and present my content and be able to interview people. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And then, man, May's coming up where we're going to be doing that fire conference. And I'm actually going to FDIC this year,
there
too.
You go. It's going to be a good time.
I'm really pumped about that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for that. And yeah, the future's bright for all of us, dude. It's just what you make of it, right? It's not easy all the time, but that's why we do it. It's a labor of love. And I hope that all of you out there get something special out of what we're presenting to you guys. We do it because we have love for this fire service. We do it because we're passionate about it. And it really is giving back to everybody else. All the information that we get from instructors, reading material, experience on the job, if we can give it back and somebody gets something out of it, again, that's why we keep doing it, because we love giving back to all of you. Rob, thank you so much. Flow and Vent, dude is awesome. He has a great social media page, Instagram, YouTube. His podcasts are really, really informative and actually a lot of fun. Like you said, ball busting. I was listening to a couple of them, and it's fun to listen to the banter you guys have going back and forth. So it's pretty fun to listen to.
Nah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah. All right, my man. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's now 10 o'clock at night, so I'm 46 years old. So right now that's midnight for me. But it's been great, dude. I can't wait to talk to you more. Brother. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll definitely do the collab next time with the whole team. So it'll be a good time.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. All right, Rob, you be safe. Everyone else be safe. I love you guys. Nozzle top.